How you doing, guys? One thing I do miss is good conversation. The older I get, the pickier I get with people I like to speak to. Now, there are two kinds of people you have conversation with. People that can uphold a good conversation, but they don't say a whole lot about themselves because they're embroiled in the conversation. Then you've got those self-promoting braggarts that like to talk about themselves. In 10 minutes, you know everything about them. And the sad thing about that is, you've already had their best. There's really no point in talking to them again. Because every time you talk to them after that, you're going to hear the same thing. I had a Bible instructor that was one of these self-promoting braggarts. The first 15 minutes I talked to this guy, I probably knew everything I needed to know about him. His conversation never changed. The entire 10 years I knew the guy, there was never anything new. It was the same thing over and over and over. And what I didn't realize at the time was that he epitomized Watchtower. That should have given me a heads up on the organization. Unfortunately, it didn't. I didn't see it. Reason being, Watchtower, the society, which they were called at the time, was shrouded in mystery. I didn't know much about them except what he told me. What he chose to tell me or what he chose to make up, I didn't see it. It wasn't for a few years before JW Broadcasting came about. And my honest opinion, other than the CSA problem in the organization, I think JW Broadcasting was the biggest public relations disaster going. I had heard about it. People were saying, did you see JW Broadcasting this month? And they were acting like it was the greatest thing going. And I hadn't seen it because I didn't have access to it. And I figured, what am I missing? I finally did sit through it one time. And I was extremely disappointed. I didn't hear anything new. It was the same thing we were already hearing at the meetings. And these guys weren't particularly good speakers. I've heard better speakers in the Thursday night theocratic ministry school. Well, I kept my opinion to myself. I said, maybe I'm missing out on something. So I watched it again and again and again. And the thing is, the more and more I watched this, the more I was starting to see through their bullshit. Because there was never anything new. And it was always things that were at the meeting, and they were self-promoting. And I did notice one thing, especially when I found out about the child abuse problem. These guys were liars. Talking about the table of liars, they were the table of liars. Because they would flat out deny there was a child abuse problem. And yet, we knew there was. Especially when Jeffrey Jackson came out on the stand and admitted there was. And I'm thinking, don't these guys talk? Don't they know what each other is saying? But apparently they don't. And the funny thing was, Gary Brew. Now here is an ass clown I cannot take serious. Ever since the masturbation video, I find this guy to be a total ass clown. And everything he says pretty much exposes that organization.
And truly, this was an empty promise coming from the table of liars. It's of note that the liars will often shroud or cover their lie in truths.
And as time went on, I realized JW Broadcasting wasn't all that. Well, when I found out the depth of the child abuse problem, and every time I was watching JW Broadcasting, I'm like, this is all they're doing is promoting themselves. And they're trying to shroud the whole organization and their crimes. And the thing is, there were two kinds of people, either those that saw what was going on or those that chose not to see it. And I always still wonder how many people actually knew what was going on but pretended not to see it. There was no way I could live this lie. When these guys are looking you flat in the eye, and as condescending as they are, one thing I never liked was the way they speak to you like children. And they do. They're pretty damn good at it. I found that quite condescending. But obviously, yes, they do know there's a child abuse problem. Otherwise, they wouldn't be pushing the issue so much. And the thing is, the more they speak, the more they expose themselves. And the thing is, too, even though they're lying, they like to point in other directions, point the blame at everybody else. But the thing is, the things they're accusing other people of, they themselves are guilty of. If you listen to them very closely, every time Gary Bruce speaks, as a matter of fact, every time any of them speak, and they're making accusations about others, they are telling you flat out what they themselves are guilty of. And as presumptuous and as pompous as they are, now, religiously speaking, who is supposed to be the reigning king is Jesus Christ. But then again, you won't hear that. But they love to promote the governing body. And that in itself should wake up every JW if you just listen to their words very closely.
Just must stay alert. So in review, how can we identify a lie? Look for the zero, any component in a statement or teaching that cancels out a Bible truth. How can we avoid being caught up in the cry of peace and security? Well, Jehovah has already promised peace and security and has clearly forewarned us that a false cry will soon be coming. And what table can we trust? The table surrounded by our future kings, the governing body.
To me, these are the empty promises from the table of liars. You guys have a good day. I'll be talking to you soon.